Yourself?
I think it's difficult to actually pinpoint three particular issues of concern. I think 42,000 dead civilians, men, women, and children, hospital services decimated, schools, universities bulldozed to the ground. I think there's many issues of concern. But from the top of my head, if I had to pinpoint three particular issues of concern, I would say straight away the first one, international governments reinstating funding to UNRWA. I think they're one of the biggest charities in Palestine, in Gaza, that are delivering aid on the ground. They have been for many years now. And let's not forget, ladies and gentlemen, this issue I call it an issue, this calamity that's arisen since October is nothing that's come out of the blue. This has been ongoing for many years now. In the years that I've been active in politics, every couple of years I'm outside the town centre or in central London protesting. So I think it's important we as general public shouldn't just make a judgment or base our views on who's come out in the last 5 to 6 months. I think it's important we look at who's come out for the last 10 years. That is when you see real democracy and a real representative that is reflective of your opinion. So UNRWA funding would be one.
Yeah.
I think that immediate, someone who works in King George Hospital, I know how traumatic injuries can be. I cannot even imagine how traumatic the injuries in Palestine is, with decapitated bodies, limbs missing, basic blood services lacking. So I think it's essential that we need to provide medical care for those who need it the most immediately, whether that's in neighboring countries, whether that's abroad. Like I understand, I think it was Mexico, or it was one of the South American countries that recently stated that they will take Palestinian, those that are injured, and provide medical aid. So I think that's essential. And the third one, I would say peace. Peace. We need peace in the Middle East. We need peace in Palestine. We need peace in Gaza and the West Bank. Not many people have spoken about the most. And finally, peace, lasting peace.
Okay, thank you. That's your three. Andy?
Pinochet walked free, crimes against humanity. Tony Blair, many of us think he's a war criminal, want trial. My guess is the war criminals responsible for death, unless we reform the judiciary, we will not see a change. If you try and get a warrant to send Blair for trial, you'll get kicked out. The judges will laugh at you. So we need to go back to my earlier argument. We need to change our democracy. So not only have we got meaningful votes, but meaningful justice. If you have a recall petition on an MP, why not say if you get enough signatures, you have a citizens' jury to decide if a criminal prosecution should go ahead. What happened today with Stephen Lawrence? The judges chucked it out. You need to change our justice system, not just locally in England, but to impact on the world justice system. So any one of us here, we could get together and say, well, we're going to court to stop arms going to Israel. People risk going to prison to stop arms going to Israel. Why not make it easier? Instead of, we can still go to the factories and stop it, but you can say, hold up, we want a change in the law. If there's 10,000, 100,000, we will have a grand jury, not a judge who won't tell you if he's got links to the arms companies, who won't tell you if he goes drinking at the club with the same barrister. Not that ever happens, I'm sure. But I hope you take my point. We have to reform the justice system to make sure that these terrible things don't happen.
Thank you, Andy. Moving to my right.
Thank you. It's really difficult. This is a really emotional, visceral thing that's been happening, not just on the 7th of October and onwards, but choosing three if I have to. I would say to you that all the things that I have worked with is around achieving justice and equity. And I think my top three would be to ensure that the ICC rulings are followed. It's not one law for us and one law for them. There should be sanctions on the Netanyahu government and any officials, including Netanyahu, who I consider war criminals. One of the things that I think would achieve some social justice, even on our doorstep, would be about divesting pension funds from Redbridge Council. That's huge amounts of money that is going towards firms. And number two is, again, this is no particular order, but we do need lasting peace. There has been many efforts that have been obstructed in the last 3 decades. We need their right of return, the right of self-determination. We don't need governments like the USA, like the UK, choosing the government for the Palestinians. Now, one thing that's the third item that I think that I'm very passionate about is, as an MP, I will be advocating for a pathway, a visa route for Palestinian people and particularly children to come to safety to this country. I think there is a lot of evidence to show that there are many children who have no living relatives, for example, Palestinian children and young people who have relatives here who could take good, safe care of them, and that will be a priority for me.
I think my 2 of 3 partially already covered by the 2 other. Anyway, I repeat my so new immigration scheme like Ukraine system for Palestinian people, and this is first one. And second one is reactive all financial and infrastructural support to all NGOs, including Anbara, including One Kitchen working there. And third one is participate on reconstruction of Gaza and West Bank. No one is talking about it. We need to start talking. Thank you.
No, it's more not a question as such, but something for the general public to think about. Now, multiple governments across the world, even some MPs in the UK Parliament, have suggested, as Noor suggested, that we relocate Palestinians in, say, the UK, America, the US. Now, the question for me and the general public to think about is that a decision for us to make? Should it not be a decision for those in Palestine to make? And B, many in Palestine could easily have escaped. They could have easily have left Gaza over the years. They have chose to remain in Gaza. They refuse to be pushed out of their community because more often than not, once you leave, you're not allowed to return back. So this is something that I don't think any one individual, member of parliament, prospective parliament, it's not a decision for us to make, it's a decision for them to make. For many years now, since the Nakba, it's an easy option to just get out, pack your bags and leave. It's something that's been available to the vast majority of residents that live in Palestine, West Bank and in Gaza. They have chose not to do it. They have chose not to be pushed out, and they have refused to leave their home, their ancestral home, and their land. So I believe that maybe this particular subject matter needs a lot more thinking, and we need to listen to their views rather than give our views. So I just thought I'd put that on the record.
Thank you for that.
I'd like to add to that, if I may. I support what Said has said. It is the decision of the Palestinian people, what they want to do. I think it's really important to highlight that whole neighborhoods have been wiped out. The infrastructure has been wiped out. We should be acting from a point of compassion and humanity and providing the tools required for immediate assistance, be that in Palestine or elsewhere.
Thank you for that. So let me put that into context, that particular area, and I'm going to bring some other points in here as well. So part of that context is not so much that we decide for the Palestinians, otherwise we're actually participating in ethnic cleansing.
Yes.
It's actually about choice. So if I give the comparison to Ukraine, we didn't ask Ukrainians whether they wanted to. We offered that if they wanted to, they could come here. We opened our doors. So really the question on that is in the context of, should we, as a priority, offer support to those, whether it's on a temporary basis, and then they return once Gaza is rebuilt, or whether it's on a permanent basis, but at least there is a choice. Without that offer, there is no choice. So that's the real context of that question. So I had 12 things. You touched on some, but by no means all of them. I'm going to just bring Samantha in here now, just to cover a couple of those other points that you should also consider if you are successful, and also for the audience to consider as well. So
Thank you. So the question of what three we focus on is a really good question. But if we talk about Palestine Solidarity Campaign and, you know, what their stance would be, we're dealing with an apartheid system, and that has to be recognised. You know, it is an apartheid system. For those of you that would have been to West Bank and Gaza or, you know, any of those places, you will see the day-to-day freedom or non-freedom for the Palestinians. Absolutely no freedom at all. There are children in prisons. There are brothers and sisters in morgues, predominantly Palestinian brothers, whose bodies are not released and won't be released until they have done their time. There is absolute subjugation and oppression, illegal settlements. All of these things need to be undone, and this is for the long haul. And yes, we need to show compassion, but those Palestinians there will tell you, every single one that some of us have been fortunate to meet and touch our lives, is that we will not leave, because that's exactly what the Israeli government wants to do. Is in the fight for the long haul. It is freedom and equality and citizenship. These people are not having access to anything free, and I'm going to quickly just ask Diana to add to that as well. It's very, very important.
The one thing I want everyone to realize is the right of return.
Yes.
In 1948, the Nakba, they got rid of the Palestinians, they dispossessed them, and they could not come back. So when we talk about bringing refugees here, that's okay, but only conditional that the right of return remains. Without the right of return, it's, as Mohammed says, ethnic cleansing. And one more point I want to make. There are numerous children who are in the most traumatic state. This country has refused to bring a single child here for medical attention. They bring Ukrainians, but not Palestinian children, who are often who've been far more seriously damaged. And I think that's something we could consider as well.
Thank you. So, let me just finish that list off with a few more things for you to consider. So, more detail, bilateral discussions between the UK and Israel on trade. Since we've left the EU, UK is pursuing individual trade agreements with countries, or one of those would be discussions with Israel. That would need to be reviewed in light of the current war and the potential case of genocide. So making trade deals which would be beneficial to that country under those circumstances. I believe if you are successful going forward, raising these issues in Parliament, furthermore, bringing further light to the role of the UK, particularly the military role that has played in the current war. So particular flights and transparency of those flights that have taken off from Cyprus and flown over Gaza. So this is the level of detail I would like you to consider if you are going forward, because some of the main headlines we cover every day, and certainly you see placards and demos, but certainly as a politician, as an MP moving forward, would like you to be much more detailed over some of the things that really impact on what's going on at the moment. So I'll leave that there.
I'd like to just say, in addition to what you're saying, one of the things that I would be looking at is dual nationality. And British citizens going over to Israel to serve in the army and returning, sometimes fated as heroes. I want that to stop. Commit genocide and return and be fated. That has to stop.
So there's a lot more on the list. We won't cover everything today, but this is just really a flavour to get beyond the headline and really get into the detail and the actual context of some of the real issues that affect it. So,
I just want a quick little mention, because it's not been discussed and I don't think it will be discussed. One of the topics that I find when knocking on doors in Redbridge is a lot of residents who are upset, and they ask me two questions. Why are you not talking about Congo? And why are you not talking about Sudan? Now, what is happening in Congo and Sudan is equally as bad. It's equally as traumatic, and it's important that we as human rights activists, we as residents, we as humans, we are fair across the board. And I urge everyone to speak equally as much about Sudan and Congo as you do about Palestine. So that's all I wanted to say.
All right. Let's just move to some more local issues.
Can I say
Yep.
something on this? As you know, everyone knows that this government, last 14 years, what we had is more friend of Israel, more friendly government of Israel. And unfortunately now, future government maybe predicted someone, they are also the same. And I can guarantee you, okay, no one of Workers' Party of Britain are friends of Israel. You know, Friends of Israel is a big lobby who made this transformation in UK politics. So no one of Workers' Party is member of Friends of Israel. I can guarantee. Okay, what you can't find on mainstream other parties, the big parties. Labour have 40% of their member are Friends of Israel. Can you imagine? So hope the bilateral agreement in future, whoever go to the government, take in consideration that this country, the people, they don't want exactly whatever want Mr. Sir K. Starmer or Rishi Sunak. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Not at the moment. We will have time a little bit later on. I've still got some of the questions that come from the audience to go through. So let's turn to local. So I'm going to start with a nice opener for you to consider. So data has been brought to the attention of the local council leader that life expectancy in Ilford North is actually higher than it is if you're a resident in Ilford South. And given this very contrasting and very concerning data, what would you do to address this as the prospective MP? So let's start with who hasn't started first. Nurjan, would you like to go first on this?
Yeah, thank you for that question. That's very pertinent. You're absolutely right. Life expectancy from one end, that's Loxford, through to Chigwell. If you live in Chigwell, you will live 8 years longer than people who live in Loxford. This is public health information. I've mentioned before, 1 in 3 children are living in poverty in Ilford South. We have very high levels of deprivation from factors 1 to 4, and that could be joblessness, multiple health issues, all of those issues. Now, health and social care is my day job. What I would say to you is that over the last decade, the inequality gap has increased. And my job has been to actually address the underlying reasons for the inequality, whether it's because of multiple health issues, whether it's poor nutrition, whether it's because we have poor services, because people make poor lifestyle decisions. But one of the biggest issues is income inequality. And what we are seeing is a raging cost of living crisis, where people are having to do 2 or 3 jobs just to pay their rent, getting into debt, not being able to pay for their fuel. One of the things that I want to lobby for as an independent MP is greater support for the most vulnerable within our communities. Now, already we have a hardship fund. I know for a fact that there is scope for that to be enlarged for those people who are in poverty. We have an amazing population, a really vibrant population of 49% are not in work. We need to get those people trained up and in work. We need prosperity for every income group. The research shows that if you have a decent job, if you have income coming in, you can make those good lifestyle choices that will improve your overall health for yourself, for your children, for older people. Now, another issue that I think very strongly will impact on people's quality of life is having decent public services. You know, when my mother had cancer, I had to fight for services that she needed. So social care, we've had £4 million worth of cuts in the last 2 years. We've had youth services cut. So all of these public services need investment. Not only investment, we need to understand what our population needs. And I've done a lot of work around this, but basically Ilford South is actually on its knees, I would say. There is a lot of need, but also there is a lot of opportunity.
Just start with the 2 minutes, that's fine. So I'm just going to come back on those. I'm sure everybody, would agree with those laudable objectives, but the question is, what would you specifically do to address those areas that you've raised as concerns for Ilford South as the MP? What can you practically do to change that?
So practically, there are three things I would say. As an MP, I would be lobbying for additional funding for those public services. The second thing that I would be doing is making sure that the transformation work that is required within the area, reviving the high street, for example, making sure that we have enough access to levelling up funding, for example, making sure that people know what level of deprivation we have. One of the other issues that I'm very keen to do is have a proper community wealth building strategy for this area, not just for individuals, families, but also businesses.
I'm just going to really home in because the nature of some of the questions, which is, given that you're an independent, don't worry, I'll be grilling the party members equally.
Yes.
Given that you're independent, how do you propose to change anything, given you will literally have no influence as far as being in government or being in opposition?
So I'm just going to say this. We all know that actually there is an opposition and there is a leadership, and there are numerous numbers of other MPs, including one SNP. Now, if anybody knows about Parliament, you have to work collaboratively to get policies passed through. You have to work together. I will be listening to my residents. I will be then conveying their needs to Parliament, lobbying and persuading and working with other groups who are aligned with my residents' needs and try and get legislation through, get additional help, lobby, and ensure that our needs are met.
Okay. Thank you. Andy.
In the unlikely event I'm your MP on July the 4th, not only will I go into Parliament and demand a better deal for Ilford South, I would continue to go to council meetings and demand that the local council change the budget to improve a lot of. I'm delighted to say there's quite a few of us here in the room who wanted the budget changed, and I would build upon that. The budget that was the 29th of February, the Labour Council decided to attack the poor by cutting benefits for residents. So there's a meeting this Thursday at Cabinet. We need to get a question in by 5 p.m. It's slightly off the topic, but Diana's thing about not a single child from Palestine has got medical treatment here. I didn't know that. You can go and ask Jazz Atwell that question at Cabinet, but you'll have to have a bit of subterfuge because that's not on the agenda. So you have to ask a question that's on the agenda, and then you can ask that question. Why aren't you helping the sickest children on the planet? It's a disgrace. Of course they won't answer the question. You might even get blocked. But you don't have to answer. Just asking the question holds the powerful to account. So I would be saying, hold on, you need to change Parliament. It's not good enough asking questions in Parliament. The local people need to ask questions of me. The poor need to come to me and say, why haven't I got food? Why is my house cold? Why can't I afford the bills? And I would be saying I should be in the town hall. And if the Labour Party says, well, you ain't going to come into the town hall, I'll be meeting at the same time as the Cabinet and saying, come and ask me questions, and you should be asking them questions about why they're not changing the budget so it's towards the level of Scandinavian public services so the poor don't die unnecessarily. That's the sort of
Yeah, to answer that question, very interesting. I think if you take a tourist come from back home who don't know Ilford South or North, whatever boundary, if you take them to have a trip around Ilford South and Ilford North, then they can answer you immediately why they are living longer. So I think you don't need to be an Einstein, to answer that question. So why? So if you know, I believe everyone knows George Galloway and his party, Workers' Party of Britain, is new, but George Galloway is not new. been in politics near about 40 years. He's a historic socialist. So his motto is to make closer this distance between richer and poorer. So our whole policy of Workers' Party of Britain based on that, to make closer distance between richer and poorer. I think answer is there. It's on manifesto as well, on my speech as well. Education is the foundation of the future for our children. So as our manifesto says, free higher education. So if you make free higher education, low income people, I think all these people, their children, they can be educated easily, and then they can make their future better in future. And we have for service for a plan for elderly, and we have a plan for affordable housing. So if you see our manifesto, if you have a look on my speech, I think you have an answer also there. Thank you.
Okay. Right.
This question is a bit of a spider web, so I'm going to first and foremost, I'll say yes, the life expectancy in Ilford North is higher than that of Ilford South. The life expectancy in Wanstead is higher than that of Ilford North, I think, and that of Chingford and Woodford is higher than everyone. I think it's got less to do with certain, it's more complicated than just saying 40% are not at work. There are someone who works in a hospital, there may be underlying issues to that, whether it's disability, whether it's English not being a first language. But I think one of the common denominators is the fact certain community becomes more disadvantaged the higher the ethnic minority count is. So we need to look into that. Why is it that in certain communities where there's a high ethnic minority population, that particular community is disadvantaged the most? So I think that is a question that needs to be answered. And I think it's a lot more easier than saying 40% are not at work, just get them in work. It's far more complicated. I think it's important to not give anybody any false ideas. A member of parliament has very little influence in local authority, near enough zero. I recollect whilst working for a member of parliament, the gentleman spent day and night sending emails, day and night challenging the Labour authority, just to be totally ignored. So being a member of parliament, myself included, nobody here, I don't think, will have the authority or the power to actually implement change. What we can do, and what I will do, as I have been for the last 10 years, which is well documented on the internet, is hold the local Labour authority to account, hold the council leader to account. Our lives and the quality of our lives are being disadvantaged because of the decisions, like Andy said, are being made in council. This is less to do about what an MP can do for you and more about local authority representation that comes in councillors. Now, it's quite obvious, and I can sit here for the next 2 minutes and talk about our beautiful manifesto that answers everything, but I'm not going to simplify it that much. I'm going to be honest, and I'm going to be blunt, and I'm going to say the only way to change the lives of our community and our residents within is to have genuine opposition in Redbridge Council. As it stands, we have, I would say, 58 odd Labour councillors and about 3 Tory councillors who I don't think often step foot in Ilford. They spend their time in Woodford and Wanstead, lovely greenery, lovely streets, clean. And, I grew up in Wanstead, it's a beautiful area, and,
Just need to
wind up. And so my honest answer to you is we are going to be the opposition. For far too long, the Tories are nowhere to be seen. They're taking a salary as leader of the opposition. They're taking salary as councillors, but they do very little. Going forward, I and the Green Party in Redbridge plan to put forward 63 council candidates in every single seat in this borough, and we plan to be the real opposition.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next question. This question is, what role do you think privatisation has in the NHS? Before you consider that, just bear in mind the context is that given limited budgets and availability of budgets, given all of the challenges that the UK has as a whole, what role, therefore, in that context, does privatisation play in the NHS? So, who has one first? Let's start with that.
Yeah, privatization, all privatization, if you see privatization, if you see, who are they? Who are these players? All friend of conservative or friend of Israel or friend of Israel, I can say. So these are money-making people. These are middlemen. So what they do, they just buy the service, and with that service they buy the all property and all the after taken the company, and then they sell all the property, everything worth it, and then they go bankrupt and change the name. So all these financial games. So we are not in favor of these games, that we don't have friend like this, the money making middleman. So we are against this. We are strongly against it. And with NHS is crisis nowadays, I think part of the responsibility of this middleman.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
This is something I'm extremely passionate about, the NHS. I work at Cambridge Hospital. I've done so for well over a decade. I have many friends, family, neighbours that use the services. I think I'm going to be the first one to disagree with Mohammed Asif, the chair. The money does exist. There's an abundance of money. And if there's billions of pounds to give away for dodgy contracts during COVID, there's definitely millions of pounds to support our NHS. First and foremost, I have seen firsthand the difficulties faced by patients, staff, services, and the honest morale of the community when there's a lack of funding in our NHS. We've been a little bit fortunate in King George, where due to the great work that the staff are doing, we've been allocated extra budgets to open different services compared to other hospitals across the country. But in terms of your question, I'm a strict, simple no to privatization. Simply no, there is no need for it. The NHS belongs to the people. It should stick with the people, for the people, and it should be run by the people. There is plenty of things we can do to save money. There are some justified concerns, lack of allocation of budget. The managers can be a little bit more stringent, but ultimately, I do not believe in a privatized NHS. I have seen firsthand the negative impact it has on our services. I believe that our government and any MP in Parliament should lobby for a fully funded NHS to the point of use, and that is why we are one of the greatest countries in this world, because of our NHS, and I'm totally against the privatization.
Okay, thank you. Please.
Privatisation and smashing trade unions are key pillars of the Thatcherite settlement since 1979, and they're combined. Where you had a strong working class, they wouldn't put up with stuff. There would be political strikes. People would actually give up wages to help doctors and nurses. But it's changed over time. And we've got the terrible sight of food banks, people begging, people sleeping in the streets. To challenge privatisation, we need to talk to people, to get people involved at a local level. Because we say it's the local level. Why can't we see that contract? If I'm the director of a company, I expect to see the contract. You're telling me it's good value, but I can't see the contract. Your salary's gone up, but my dividend's gone down. What's going up? I'm going to sack the director. But there's this consensus, it's commercial confidentiality. You working class, you can't see these contracts. We, the elite, we know these contracts are good value. So I'm hoping you can see my point. They get away with privatisation, the daylight robbery of these nonsense contracts, because there's not enough of us at these meetings. There's 40, 50 here. To change things, it needs to be 500. If Jazz knew there was 500 people in the room, he would be here tonight. But he knows the working class have been trained to be apathetic and docile, And until you have a working class that demands a fair deal, you won't get changed, in my mind. And that, I mean, I don't know how, because I go around talking to people and say, let's have a solid working class. We need to be campaigning. And most people look at me as though I'm strange, I have to confess. But I believe in the notion of a politically active working class, and that's why we have a National Health Service. And if we lose a politically active working class, we will lose the NHS, because West Streeting has said it needs to reform or die. Sorry, I've got enough time.
Yeah.
My apologies.
It's all right. Thank you, Andy. Well done.
This is a matter very, very close to my heart. Most of my family actually work in the NHS, and for a variety of reasons due to health, we've actually had to use the NHS more often than others. One of the things that I'm going to first of all say is that I am against privatisation. But the reality that we have to face, and I think some of my friends might be naive in this room, is that we are already facing a situation where we have a commissioner-provider split. The talk of contracts, well, actually, I commission those services, the hospitals, the GP practices, the community health services. And what I know from experience is we go for best value. But guess what's happened? Over the years, Tories and Labour have actually connived to make a market of everything, health, social care. When providers come in, profit is the winner. And what happens? Prices are low in the beginning and they increase and increase and increase. Who's paying? We're paying. So my issue here is that as an independent MP with 30 years of experience in terms of commissioning in public services, what I want to work on is increasing capacity within the NHS, more beds, more wings, more specialised centres, increasing wages. In every contract that I commission, I make sure we at least have London living wage, at least. Making sure that we grow the workforce. Why do we need to face a shortage? Why aren't we growing our own? I need to prioritise that. We need to have policies that ensure that we have additional medical school places, that we have additional care courses. We are the 6th largest nation in the world. We have the money. We have to reprioritise. We have to prioritise our needs over war. One of the things that I want to say, just very quickly, is about transformation. Now, West Streeting talks about transform or die, something like that. I'm going to say, as somebody who commissions within the health and social care sector, that actually there is a lot of waste, there is corruption, and yes, we do need to tackle that. But that's not the only issue. I would be for a small increase in NI contributions to tackle the waiting list, to tackle the infrastructure problems, to tackle the shortages, because we deserve a world-class health service.
Okay. Thank you for that. Now your positions on privatisation, so in essence, against privatisation. I'm going to give you a follow-up, and this is a scenario for you, just to really to test you. So the proposal put forward as part of an element of privatisation, that each individual, say, resident, member of society is allocated a certain amount to spend per head within the NHS. They can take that money, a bit like pupil funding, and they can take that money with them, and they're given a choice. You can wait 12 months, maybe 2 years for an operation on the NHS, because unfortunately that's how long it's going to take, given the current resources. Or you can go to a nice private hospital, the same amount of money that would have been spent in the NHS, you can take that with you, and you can top it up if you wish, or you can use that and spend it at a private hospital. What's your opinion on that?
My position,
Yeah.
and I will preface it by saying that it's happening already. Would you like your hip operation in the NHS hospital, or would you like to go to Bupa? Would you like to wait another 10 years, or would you like relief quickly?
That's why I asked the question.
Now, coming back to the solution, my position is I am not for a two-tier system. I've seen it in other countries. The reason that I say this is, knowing the health and social care market that I know and the bottlenecks, what happens in that situation is those who can get a good level of care and the majority fall by the wayside. So I'm against that kind of solution which creates a two-tier system for people. There needs to be quality and it needs to be free at the point of contact.
So in this scenario, it is not a two-tier system. i.e. the choice is equal to everybody. So an individual can wait the 2
I'm
years
sorry
and
to
have
say
it on the NHS.
this, I'm sorry to say this, but
Yeah.
the effect, the impact
Yeah.
becomes a two-tier system. And currently, we have 17 weeks waiting for any hospital treatment.
Yeah.
We are already behind. We have buildings that are crumbling.
Yeah.
So the priority for me is not about giving people unrealistic choices. It's about investing in all areas. Do you know, Mohammed Asif, that actually private providers will pick and choose, they will cherry pick the most profitable areas, and what happens to the rest of services?
So we talked about listening, so I'll repeat the question, because this is not a scenario that you're creating, it's a scenario that I am creating, which is, this is not about the provider choosing the patient, this is about the patient choosing the provider. So the choice is with the patient, the resident gets to choose and say, the same amount of money being allocated to all in this scenario, and the resident says, okay, I have a choice being given to me, I can go to Bupa and I can have this operation now with the funding, or I can go to the NHS. So in that scenario, would you be in favour of, and I'm going to try to pin you down, in that scenario of privatisation, would you be in favour of giving choice to individuals? Yes or no, please?
I've answered this question already, actually.
So is that no? Is that no?
No. I am against privatization.
So it's a no.
Yes.
That's fine. It's a no. Okay. It's a tough question. I'm really going to drill you on this. So same scenario, because your position is you're against privatization. In that scenario, are you against the choice of a resident to make and say, no, that's a form of privatization, therefore the answer is no, or is it a yes?
Before I say no, I'll just give a couple of lines why I say no. So this is in some parts already on the ground. It's happening. A good friend of mine, I spoke to him last week, I won't mention the name. So he was telling me about a scenario where he's been offered the same service. His partner's been told, you can go private and you can do the scan. It's an operation. Now the problem is his partner medically has a high BMI. Now, when these private companies get the workload, they pick and choose who they operate and who they don't. So those who might have underlying health issues, those who may be too elderly, those who have, say, high BMI, any general medical concerns that make that private facilitator uncomfortable, they can just say, no, we're not going to do it. You go in the back of the list. So you'll find someone that's been waiting 1 whole year on the list for another 2 or 3 years, and no private provider has taken on that operation. Then you'll find somebody that's very, I don't know, say low BMI, gets a referral today, gets the operation next week. So in some regards, it is more than a two-tier system. It is open for interpretation. I do not believe in privatization. I believe if there's money to outsource work, and if there's money to pay those who are doing the private work, there's money to reinvest back into the NHS. Those people that work in private work in my hospital or in any hospital. Private providers do not have special medical staff. It's the very same staff that works in our local hospitals that are being taken away from the NHS, put into a private environment with a slightly higher pay, lot more workload, and ultimately who suffers? The NHS, our community, and our families. Big no.
Well, it reminds me of the Keir Starmer question, where if your member of the family was sick, would you pay for private healthcare? He said no, they wouldn't do it. And there are sincere people who would do that. I'm not one of them. If someone in my family was sick and I could afford it, I regret to say that I'm flawed. I would pay for the treatment. I don't think that's likely to happen. But that scenario is likely to happen. But there is a two-tier system at the moment, of course. But I'm sure Sadiq Said was part of the campaign. There was an American multinational, Sam campaign with others, who was buying up GP practices. Rosary's nodding inside. I can't remember. It's on the tip of my tongue. I can't remember. But by campaigning, taking them to court, the multinational thought, well, the profits are going to be a bit thin here. We'll go and stick our capital elsewhere. So campaigning works. So if enough of us campaign, enough of us join our residents' association, You don't like Tusk, if you join one of the other party, one of the other people here join their campaign, be active after the election on privatisation, housing, whatever, poverty. Together we can make a difference.
Just to understand, I ask you a question.
Sure.
Is that this simple? Can I take money and bring it to Germany to get my treatment?
So this is restricted to the UK rather than taking it abroad.
So you can imagine who are those people who are going to job. So this only to help their friends, to move public service job to private service. So we are against it. It's absolutely not.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Okay, let's move to an international question, just to break things up a little bit. So this is one that's been sent in by somebody as a question. So I'll read it out in its entirety. Just a little bit of background context first within it. Redbridge Council has a current budget of 42 million as a result of central government funding cuts over many years. As a result, the council is having to make cuts in basic services such as schools, housing, social services, etc. Yet when it comes to spending on foreign wars, central government has a magic money tree. What are your views on war expenditure, including the Middle East and Ukraine? So, since you were last, let's start with you first.
Yeah, it's very simple. Our policy is like this one. We just simply want to move our all funding from fueling war to costing housing.
Okay.
This is our policy.
So again, cutting back or stopping expenditure on war.
Taking money from there, putting here.
Okay. Thank you for that. Let's go. Reverse order.
So, just double, just want to make sure.
So, given cutbacks to local government, yet there is money available for spending on war.
Let's not beat around the bush. War is a business. War, there are people making billions of pounds in profit. Where there's one group of people suffering, there's another group of people profiting. Now, war, in my opinion, is not necessary. I think we're quick to jump to foreign intervention. I think we pick and choose where and how we intervene. I think it's quite obvious based on what's happened in Iraq and in Afghanistan. In more cases than not, foreign government enter sovereign land and we come out with a lot of their wealth. I'm not a supporter of war. I'm anti-war. And ultimately, I think there needs to be far more emphasis on the amount of money we spend facilitating wars, whether that's a budget or a nuclear budget or a Trident budget. And I think ultimately, in the long run, like the Green Party believe, we need to de-escalate. We need to spend less money as time goes on. And we need to ensure that we invest in peace, not in war.
Back in the, I think it was the 30s, Lansbury was a council leader, passed a budget, he went to jail. He said, better to break the law than not the poor. We need that sort of attitude today. And if I went around the town hall, perhaps around this room, who wants to go to jail for a budget? There probably wouldn't be many takers. But as a stepping stone to try and agitate, you can call for a referendum if there's enough people and say, well, hold up. In the same way that tobacco companies would glorify smoking, arms companies, their lobbyists are always saying war is the question. If you talk about peace, you're a traitor. So to put it in the council context, we want a referendum for increased spending on the poor, say. And we're going to move from being the councillors to being the MPs by saying there's going to be a cut in defence expenditure because we're tired of these criminal wars overseas. So we're going to link the criminal wars overseas to helping the poor who don't vote and say that's a huge change, but it ain't going to happen unless you're with me. Because you're going to have significant change. And I think the majority, perhaps a majority, maybe every single person in this room wants real change. You've got to work hard at it. So that's my...
Right, yes. 42 million. I talked about cuts and maladministration and waste earlier. I'm just going to say it. Look, the justification that is used to spend our tax money on funding foreign conflicts and wars, which generates, let's not forget, what happened after Iraq? What happened after all the conflict? Not only was there a stream of refugees coming over, the misery, the hardship, the killings, we've got to stop being a warmonger. The justification is that our hegemony, our soft power is increasing, our position in the world, is more dominating. But actually, no, I'm for peace. And as my brother Said said, we need to invest in that process. As an independent MP, I will be doing that. Now, one thing I need to say here is that it's not just about war expense. It's not just about arms sales. Look at the amount of money that is being made and who is making that money in rebuilding. I'm really interested to know who is going to be rebuilding Gaza, and remarketing it. One thing on a local level that I want to see is that I want to empower people to rise up, to increase in participation, to get involved in their local area, their local democracy. Part of the work that I've been doing with the social action groups is about community building. Now, something that Andy said, and we've been working together on a variety of campaigns, is that actually, we need to hold our decision makers to account. And that's not an MP's job, just about. It's part of the job, but it's also about empowering the constituents to rise up and ask for accountability on a number of issues. So I would say we need a people-powered government, really, where we are the decision makers.
Okay, thanks for that. So there's an opportunity now for questions from the audience. I know there was at least one hand earlier. Can I just see how many people, so I can make sure we can fit in? It won't be all of the questions, and particularly consider topics that we haven't yet covered. So if we've already covered it, put your hand down. If it's something new, then put your hand up. I might take 2 or 3 in one go so we can figure out. So let me start at the front first. Keep your hands up. One. What's your question on? Give me the topic.
Okay, it's on who's going to pay more tax.
Tax?
Hate crime.
Hate crime?
I'm talking about there's 2 states of Palestine and Israel.
Okay.
I'm going to go forward.
Follow up from the last question about defence.
Okay, defence. What's the topic?
The topic is, are you really in it to win it? And now we're wasting our time here.
Okay. Yeah.
We're one of the youngest areas in the whole of the UK. We've got a massive number of young people in the borough.
Not the question. What's the topic
Well,
here?
just young people.
Young people. Okay. Young people. Yeah.
None of the topics you covered at all. So
Yeah. What's the topic on that you want? No.
it's going to be a question.
Okay. All right. We'll leave that. So let's. I'll just go through them in terms of. Is there another one? Yeah. So link 2. Okay. All right. So there's one hand there.
Special educational needs.
Okay, a lot to get through. We've got just under 20 minutes. We've got to do some closing comments as well. So won't be able to take all of them, but just looking at the areas, let's start with tax. So who had one on tax? Let's go with that.
Yeah, it's fair to say, I think, that all your party positions and independent positions would require us to spend more money basically on services. So can you just each of you say who would pay more tax to pay for all of that?
And if we could keep it fairly succinct, I'm going to do a minute, not 2 minutes anymore, because we want to get through as many of these as we can. So a minute. Who'd like to go first? Go ahead.
So I think the Green Party are the only mainstream party in the country that have actually, in our manifesto, projected spending money in public services. If you look at the Tories and Labour, there is no overall net spending in our services. So we are the only party that's actually expressed opinion to invest in that money. How will that be paid? We plan on raising the tax for the top 1% of earners. So we believe it's a fair system where those at the top 1% get taxed slightly a little bit more. And as a result of that tax, it will provide enough money and funding to pay for our NHS and other services that may be in dire need of support. And also one of the things I have to emphasize on when it comes to local democracy is unlike any other party, the Green Party have a plus point. Now, generally, you have local authorities all across London. They're a law upon themselves. You have the Mayor of London above them. The Mayor of London has authority and autonomy over a lot of things. And then you have the Greater London Assembly members. These are the individuals elected to hold the mayor to account. So when you look at local authority in London, it's majority Labour. You go to the mayor's Labour, and you've got a bulk of GLA members all Labour. Now, when you raise a concern or a problem with a particular person, it's very unlikely that they're going to bring their own house down. What the Green Party has that other parties don't is 3 fantastic Greater London Assembly members who will not hesitate to hold local authorities, Labour-led authorities, and the Mayor of London to account when we ask, how we ask. That's something no other party can offer, but we can.
Okay, so on tax, high earners pay more, yes?
Yes.
Good, right. Okay, Andy, who pays more, who pays tax?
What comes to mind, some of you might have seen the stuff about billionaires since 1979, there's been a slow amount of tax that they pay, substantial amounts. The main parties aren't in favour of taxing the billionaires more. The difficulty is turning rhetoric into action. So I'm talking to people, especially accountants, so that when it comes to the next budget meeting, which is February of next year, we have an alternative budget. So we can say, those of us in Redbridge, this is what we stand for. And it's not going to be, Labour Party is not going to say, oh, that's a good idea. You'll have to do it year after year. So I'm hoping that the group of us who did go to this budget, there was, I can't remember, there wasn't enough of us, but we made an impact. And more of us will grow over the years to say, we need a fair budget.
Okay, thank you, Andy.
So I think I'm repeating myself.
Sorry,
Do you want to
go ahead, Roger.
So I think I'm repeating myself, really, repeating what others said, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think we need to have policies that actually make big business pay. They don't pay enough to invest in public services. I go to the bank actually. Another thing I want to say is that we have, if we talk about locally, and maybe perhaps this question doesn't include local, but when we're talking about amenities locally, what are we doing with the community infrastructure levy? I was shocked to find out that developers are paying the levy, but it's not being used for the infrastructure and the services within the area that the development took place.
So good point, although that's on spend, but your one, corporation tax should be higher, big business should pay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, as you can see, the last 14 years, conservative government and opposition, you can see that one is central right, another one is central left. And presently, from left, Labour moved to more central, as we can see. And recently, if we see on the European election in other countries, the people are returning back to their origin. If you see, now central is disappearing. They're going left or right. So in future, next few years, we see there won't be any central part. Maybe it will disappear. So Sir K. Starmer is going to against the wind, I think. So in taxation, as you can see, how was built Workers' Party of Britain. So let me spend a few words on that, on this party. George Galloway, as you know, I told you, also he's a historic socialist. Labour Party was built to represent working class people. As we see, Labour Party is not representing working class people anymore. So there is a vacuum in the society to represent working class people. So we are the new party, Workers' Party of Britain, going to represent that category of people, Workers' Party of Britain. And our motto is, as I said previously, the taxation and everything should be closer. Our principle to make it closer, distance between richer and poorer. So tax, if something need to pay as a tax, obviously tax will pay richer, not poorer. Not working class people.
Okay, thank you for those positions. One on crime.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you of the candidates and everyone else. One of the things, the reason I told you to talk about hate crime, because it's becoming so known within the mainstream political party. Our former Prime Minister, Liz Truss, having a wine party with Steve Bannon and talking about convicted criminal Tommy Robinson. Equally, we have seen within the Labour Party, with the name of anti-Semitism, getting rid of not a party, honest, decent, committed public servant. And what I'm saying, we are seeing such reflection of this actually cascading into our communities. Now, question to all candidates, what would you do to create cohesive environment in our communities? I want to see one red bridge, one community. How do you do it?
Okay, so more. How would you?
One red bridge.
One red bridge.
Community. How do you create
cohesive communities? Okay, Annie?
First off, you want each London borough to keep a report on hate crime. So you have a written report, then you have a verbal report, and then the person takes questions. It baffles me as to why people aren't demanded. That's how you drive business forward. It happens in the NHS. This reporting happens all the time. Because it's underfunded, they struggle, but Si's correct. There's been wonderful innovations at King George. They seek to share best practice around the country. I went to my police, I went to a police meeting and I said to the police representative, what's your command structure? Who's responsible in Redbridge across East London for rape, hate crime, whatever, so we can compare their performance with, say, West London. What's shared best practice? That doesn't happen in the police. And my argument is that scrutiny is always good for someone else, and it's never good for ourselves. Where you really have to push to get reasonable scrutiny of the public. My wife would probably have a fit if she knew how much time I was looking about what's Jeremy Corbyn up to, or I need to do the Wordle, rather than do my real job that pays as a landlord, which pays the bills. Scrutiny is difficult, but you have to really fight for it, and that will not only help hate crime, but it will help rape, violent crime, burglary across the piece. So that's my
Let's go to James.
Yeah, there is a say, the world is nice because we are different. So I think for cohesive transfer within the society, first of all, we need to keep our respect. Don't lose our respect to each other. We can have different view, different idea, different philosophy. And we have this is normal, and that's why world is nice. If not, it will be boring, no? So I think the respect, education, and patience. Yeah, respect to each other.
Okay, thank you.
So I guess it comes in two bulks: hate crime and crime as a whole. So this is something that I've experienced personally. I've been a victim of Islamophobia in the political frame and outside of it. I think that racism, be it Islamophobia or anti-black racism, exists in more or less the bulk of our mainstream parties. I think it's quite obvious, as you said. You've got Liz Truss sharing drinks with Steve Bannon. You've got Donald Trump congratulating Boris Johnson. You've got Keir Starmer, who I think it was today refused to condemn Nigel Farage. So it's in our system. In my opinion, it exists in society. It exists within the Metropolitan Police, and it exists within our politicians. That is my experience, and it's something that's well documented in public. Now, how do we challenge it? I think the most important thing is unity. Why I say unity, as someone who was actually a victim of Islamophobia, when I was racially abused, I found myself in a very strange predicament where people who were self-described as Muslims and politically active and in the community refused to say anything. They refused to raise it because they felt by them doing that, that would have an adverse effect on their political careers, or with the Labour Authority, or with the police. Unity is the key. It was the most hardest thing for me to actually accept. It wasn't the fact that I was racially abused, I've got thick skin, I can handle it. It's when I saw the community refuse to hold those individuals to account. They refused to even say anything. So, and I can go on for a long time about this, but I think the most important thing about challenging racism, challenging inequality in our society and our community is teamwork. You cannot have one group of people challenging it, as I did for 5-6 years, and I was constantly picked on. I had police allegations made against me, but what lacked was racism is very important. What lacked was the fact that we did not get support from. It's heartbreaking. It breaks my heart to know that the people that should have defended me the most were the ones that were silent the most. I see Diana Nesland, who supported me so much. Wendy Taylor there supported me. Andy, Ruba, there were so.
I'm just going to need to wind up. We're running out of time.
I was supported more as an Islamophobic victim by non-Muslims than I was by Muslims. So my call would be, we need to unite as a community, guys. Unless we're one, it's easy to divide us and it's easy to conquer us. Let's not let it happen again.
Great to you. Thank you, Mike. 1 minute, please.
This is deeply personal. I've been a victim of hate crime twice. As a woman on public transport, my scarf has been taken off, and this is personal. This is why I went on to work as a trustee in the Race Equality and Community Council. And I'm not going to go on, but I'm going to tell you what actually does work, because I've worked there for 6 years as a volunteer, and these are the things that I found works. So yes, we're all in agreement. We have to tackle racism and prejudice, but how? So one of the things that I've actually been involved in is projects and initiatives that address the tensions between the newly arrived people in Hainault or Oxford or wherever it is, the new group, the people. So we need to have honest conversations, people. We need to have hate crime support. So I've been involved in setting up a project within our ECC that actually addresses the support element. We need to have opportunities, meetings, forums where different groups can come together, can actually mix, can actually get to know one another and actually voice some of the issues that they have. We have to raise awareness. You know, I helped put together a Islamophobia Awareness Day, you know, a knife crime assembly. We need opportunities like that to come together. One of the things that is really bothers me is that hate crime isn't correctly recorded by the police. That's an issue that needs to be resolved. Education for our young people, you know, where do they learn racism? Where do they learn Islamophobia? We need to address that by going to schools and doing education. One of the things that I think is really important is ongoing training for police and organizations that are there to keep us safe. The other thing that's really, really personal to me is when I say crime prevention, it's about increasing women's safety outside, in our workplace, all of those places, whether it's our family, whether it's somebody else, providing support, making sure people are safe, and speaking up. When something is happening in front of you and somebody discloses, you make sure you support them, you direct them to services, and make sure that it's recorded. We all have a part to play. It's not just the police.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. Okay. We may be able to choose one more question, so I'm going to give one of our co-chairs the opportunity to pick the last question. This will be the final question. So, in terms of the areas that we've spoken about, one was about, is there any point standing given the number of candidates? So it's all about, is there a unity candidate? Question. The other one was around Palestine in 2 states solution, or one. Oh, over there, in that area. And there was one around defence. So you get to choose the final question, as it's your sponsoring Hustings and young people. There you go.
Local, so thinking about the community, thinking about what's happening in our local community, there's 2 that can be combined actually.
Right.
Young people with even education-wise, the crisis of our education budgets, and linked to young people and our youth.
So we've got young people that's come on top. So the final question then on young people, and I might just throw in the education part of it. Go ahead, what's your question?
I'm just saying what you're going to do for young people.
What are you going to do for young people?
Yeah, what is your strategy to support young people with a decent future? Because right now they're overburdened with debt, their education systems are a wreck. Housing, terrible.
Okay, let's move to answers because we are rapidly running out of time. So if I can keep it definitely under a minute, otherwise we're not going to meet the close time. Nurjan, let's go in reverse order.
Sorry, the question was, what are we doing?
What are you going to do as the prospective candidate for young people?
I think I mentioned youth services have been cut. So my promise, my pledge really is about putting back youth services. As a magistrate, I see people who've gotten into trouble because they didn't have anything to do, no facilities, no recreation. I think we need to invest in young people who are our future. So apprenticeships, training, and I do believe that we should actually advocate for a youth allowance so people can stay in education, people can stay in training. The other thing that I think, what was the other part? Send.
Well, just
If you want to incorporate that, yeah, people.
So I just want to say that a lot of people view Redbridge as a nice place where there are nice schools. Now, what we have to understand is actually there are groups within that group who actually need additional support. My 2 children needed additional support when they were in school because they were neurodiverse. Now, what we have is a growing demand for SEND places and inclusive education. But currently, my support, my pledge is that we need more inclusive education, whether that is special provision, whether that is mainstream schools actually having more funding to be able to cater to children like my children who are in mainstream schools.
Thank you. Perfect.
I prefer these few lines for young people. Education is the foundation of our future. We must ensure that every child, regardless of their background, has access to quality education. This means investing in schools, supporting teachers, and providing resources for students to thrive. We need to bridge the gap between privileged and unprivileged students, ensuring that all children receive the support they need to succeed. This includes after-school programs, mentorships, opportunities, and access to modern technology and resources. It means providing vocational training, free degrees, and debt relief for low-income students with study debts, as we say, free higher education. And another thing is very important, as we know, the young people are suffering for mental health. There is to make a scheme, especially for teenagers, to support with mental health.
Thank you very much.
So I should be able to, in my brain, I still think I'm young. So I think there's a lot that can be done. I think it's not wise to try and mention everything that can be done to support young people. I think we need to take baby steps before we try running. So I think ultimately one of the things that I'm proud about with the Green Party is the fact that they recently done a survey and they found that after the Labour Party, the bulk of 18 to 45-year-olds are in support of the Green Party policies, and in regards to some of the policies that they put forward to encourage, like say, abolish tuition fees. That's one of the things that the Green Parties have asked for. I think that comes later. Now, as somebody growing up in East London, Bethnal Green, I do recollect a lot of some of the issues that arise growing up in the council estate. And one of the things I want to touch on is EMA, Education Maintenance Allowance. This was something that I was fortunate enough to receive when I was studying in school. I think it was about £30 a week, and that helped me. It helped me have my chicken and chips for lunch. It helped me go in cinemas once a week. It meant I didn't have to burden my parents about money. And it also meant I had that inner confidence not to be embarrassed to go to school because I knew I had the money. Now, your politicians will tell you it's not possible, we don't have the money. Mayor of London will tell you we don't have the money, it's not possible. How did Lutful Rahman do in Tower Hamlets? He's done it. He's provided EMA and he's provided free school meals for every single primary and secondary school student in the whole borough. If Lutful Rahman can do it, why can't our government? Why can't our mainstream parties? And why can the Mayor of London? To eradicate the poverty, you have to start.
One more speaker, we're going to close because we're going to have to get out of here soon. So Andy, you can do your, thank you for that.
Lifetime tenure, that means once you rent a house in the private sector, councils, you're not going to get chucked out by a private landlord. It's the poorest kids, poorest families that get tucked around, pushed around London or wherever. Universal tenure is linked to better health outcomes, so it's a no-brainer. The main parties won't do it. Why not link it to say that, I'm floating the notion that to join a political party, or my tiny little political party, it's £1 to join for life, and it's linked with lifetime tenure. So you can say to the poor, none of this being pushed around, lifetime tenure, and you save to the wealthiest people when it's subsidised the poor. So join the party, make it a more successful party. A right to buy. Yeah, I've had enough of that. So.
Right. We've got lots of hands, but no time left. So just keeping to time, there is still closing remarks from the co-chairs. So I've run out of time. Over to the co-chairs for their closing remarks, please.
First of all,
Organisers said that we need to answer one more question because the booking is actually until 9 o'clock.
Ask one question. She was one of the most.
It's completely up to you. I'm only keeping to the script.
She was our organiser, and we must recognise.
Your decision.
Yes, it's my decision.
Go ahead.
So, and I think it would link to your closing remarks as well, right? So, Ilford South is a state Labour seat. We've got a big majority. Considering the absence of the three mainstream parties, we ain't got a Conservative here, we ain't got Labour, and we ain't got the Lib Dems here. It raises concerns about the health of our democracy. Like Andy said, if there were 500 people here, most likely those three candidates would be here. That concerns me. But how do you plan to hold the most likely candidates that are going to win to account? What are the realistic strategies you employ to challenge and potentially defeat them to ensure genuine representation? And are you in it to win it?
One word answer.
Good luck with that. Okay, who would like to go with a one word answer?
I'll give a 30-second answer. So I think you're 100% correct. I think the fact that the three main party candidates have not appeared is a slap in everyone's face. I think that gives us a loud message, which is we're not bothered about what you say. And come rain or shine, we're going to get elected on 4th of July, and we're going to carry on the way we do. Now, that has been the case for many years now. This is going to be a bit of a shocker, but I remember moving into Redbridge, and I hate to say this, but the Tories actually looked after the borough better than the current Labour. So I would say, please everyone, join the Green Party. Be a part of the movement. It's not my movement. It's not any one individual's movement. There is no independent voice that we have to listen to come rain or shine. There is no ringleader. There is no hierarchy. There is a party, and the party leadership has asked us to get involved, and you make the decision.
Thank you. Okay.
So you are in it to win it.
Yes, that's for sure. 12,000 leaflets out on the doors already.
I don't know if I'm going to win, but I'll do my best to keep trying and do the very best. I want other people to like doing it. First time I went to the town hall, I was completely scared. You get bad around it, so be active for someone, and join the activists. We're going to be outside the town hall, invited for the NHS. So do join us. That would be great.
Good time just to mention the.
Yes. This is the banner. We're a group of us being laid
Thank you. Whichever one's going next.
One word.
I think similar words. Words. As you can realize, who care about their electoral, who don't. We care because we are here. So one part answered. And second part, we can't be elected, all of us. We are fighting for one place. So if we say, okay, four of us, we win, it will be hypocrite, no? So, but one thing that makes difference, Workers' Party of Britain, because you don't waste your vote. Even though if Workers' Party's nominated person not elected, you are contributing to build a party who represent working class people. So vote Workers' Party of Britain, vote their candidate, vote Golam Tiku for Ilford South to be part of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's a state of play where there is, after 14 years of Tory chaos, 10 years of Labour in Redbridge, we've got austerity and cuts. They're not here because they're complacent. They disregard us. They do not listen to us. And there's great apathy and disenfranchisement from people. What I hear on the doorstep is people want change, real positive change. Now, what I'm going to say, am I in it to win it? Yes, definitely. What I see on the doorstep is a fantastic response from residents. They want to see a change. They want to be part of that change. They want a positive future for them and everybody else. Now, what I'm going to say is that whatever happens on the 4th, we are going to continue. I will continue doing the work that I do in the voluntary sector. I will continue building this community, galvanizing the community, working with colleagues and friends to campaign, to hold the council to account, to actually make sure that national issues are furthered. Please join me. Thank you.
I think what we've learned tonight is the big three parties have shown what I consider to be contempt for the electorate. They should have been here. They should have answered the questions. People ask me, where are they? We want to speak to them. They think they can sail through without anything. But our people here, first of all, I want to thank my colleagues who've done a wonderful work in organising tonight. And I want to thank Sarah Marie, and I want to thank Ujita at the back, and Mohammed. Every one of you has pulled your weight and done over and above what could be expected to make this evening an evening for the community. And whatever is the outcome of the election, and many of us are afraid that none of you might win, please don't forget Ilford South. From what we've heard tonight, we need the continuing community organisation and community commitment. And from what I've heard, every single one of you values our community probably a great deal more than whoever will win the seat at the election. I hope one of you does, I really do. But even if not, don't forget us here in Ilford South. And don't forget Palestine. Keep Palestine in your mind. I remember in 2021, when Israel invaded Pillar of whatever it was, Pillar of something, and people came to marches and protests, and we said, stay with us because Israel will do its damnedest. And people drifted away. And then came October the 7th. We know that Israel continues. We know that the media says nothing. But we know now that we have to be in for Palestine for the long haul, every one of us. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for your keep up the good work. Free
Palestine!
Free
Palestine!
from the river to the sea.
Palestine will be free.
There's one last thing I wanted to mention. Party politics aside, I think over the last 3 years, we've had a fantastic MP. We've had somebody who has supported Palestinian rights through thick and thin, somebody who has spoke up for the less privileged. And I think it's important that we acknowledge now that he's unfortunately leaving,